Yo, guys, what's up? No, Outer Haven intro this time, I guess. But
Oh, you can have your own if you want, DGK.
nah,
I
it's
don't know
it's
how to
fine.
do it though.
I,
All right, I'll do it
this,
now.
all right.
DGK. There you go.
But yeah, so I just kind of want to do like my own little like side theory discussion video. I was gonna make like a full-on video about it, but like got too lazy during school, and so I decided to do it just live now. And so for anyone watching, basically, it's just going to be kind of like a short, like probably 20-minute video or so, um, about Blackbeard and about the Joyboy Kingdom and like where I personally see the story going in terms of those two characters and like what secrets we might discover later on the line. And it's gonna be something I thought about for a long time, but like haven't really gone too crazy with it in terms of like I haven't seen anyone else talk about it or anything crazy like that. And so to get started, real quick, I have Nikki here, part of Outer Haven, and
What's up, guys? Nicky
it's
Vengeance.
he's gonna serve as like the check and balance, where like if he hears something that he's not agreeing with or anything like that, or doesn't understand, for the audience, he's gonna kind of like ask me about it, so like it makes more sense. And to basically start off, so the best way to start this would be going by the Joy Boy and like how I see the Ancient Kingdom. So in Fishman Island, we get the idea that Joy Boy's seemingly the king or the ruler of the Ancient Kingdom, which we know was very advanced. From what we can tell with our context clues, you'll hear me say this a lot probably, is that we've known that the 10 kingdoms, such as Alabasta, Dressrosa, all these major 10 kingdoms like Elusia and stuff like that, they're a part of, in my opinion, they're the part of the Joy Boy Kingdom. And they were the original 10 from way back then, or one of the top kingdom amounts. Because we know there's over, hundreds of kingdoms probably in the One Piece verse, but the main kingdoms are these. And so, going by the story, how I see it is that originally Joyboy was the leader of the original kingdom, the like main one, which is probably Raftel. That's probably where we're gonna eventually go with the stories. We're gonna see Raftel being the original kingdom and the ruins of it. On Alabasta, there's a scene where Vivi in the manga is talking to Luffy and Sanji basically about these runes they come across, and she mentions that these runes are kind of scattered throughout all of Alabasta, and they were basically from like previous settlements and previous like what would be seen as like larger kingdoms, but they got like destroyed. And I kind of feel like those were some of these settlements from the original Alabasta kingdoms and such as that. Um, and then like we know for things like the poneglyphs, they're most likely messages from Joy by Boys. Um, and how I see the poneglyphs being used basically was they were used as a kind of like note. They were used as a like goodbye farewell kind of note for his kingdom. And to go more in depth into that is I feel like the Gorosei, whether or not they're immortal or forever on living beings, I viewed them basically as people who were the original kind of overseers in a sense of these kingdoms, like the advisors, however you want to kind of call them. The one that I'm most interested about in the Gorosei is going to be the blonde guy because he obviously looks the youngest. And so I viewed the Gorosei as kind of being one of the main factors in the downfall of the Joy Boy Kingdom way back when, assuming they were alive then. And I see it as there were other factors, one of which being the 10 kingdoms that we have now. And to go more into that real quick is the Alabasta. We know Cobra, who is the leader of Alabasta currently, Vivi's father, and the Nefertari family. For whatever reason, he's somehow living in the desert, which normally going by political standards and such like that is
Sorry
usually.
to interject
Yeah, go.
here, but I was gonna say I'm pretty sure Nefertari, like his family, after they left. I don't know why they left though. That's the
The
thing I
celestial
can't
dragons,
remember.
right?
Yeah, because he
Correct.
was a. I remember they talked about ages ago, and I think it was during Dolphy's flashback, and when Dolphy's parents were leaving
Mary Joa.
yeah, yeah, that
Yeah.
thank you for the assist. But yeah, so I think they mentioned it then, and it just like Nefertari left, and they just called him a fool and stuff. But I don't know why he left.
Right.
Though. That's
And
the
like
issue.
the big thing about these 10 like leaders is they have relations to the celestial dragons if I'm correct. And like
Yep.
I was kind of going with that is like whereas leading with the desert thing is basically we have this king who somehow is living in a desert. Now, if you were to be a top king, right? So, one of the top 10 kingdoms in the world, right? And you were offered land. If you were valued as, a whatever you want to call them, as a partner or whatever of the celestial dragons or a past celestial dragon, I highly doubt you would be thrown into a desert where you can't grow anything, which is why the big thing about Crocodile with his dance powder for the rain was that he couldn't grow anything in the desert. The water they had was drying up. There was barely any wells, whatnot. And so it kind of looked like the Nefertari family somehow, in my opinion, pissed off the Celestial Drains and the Gorsai. And how I think this went down is I think they were the original people who warned the Joyboy family of their downfall. Now, again, as I said earlier, is the top 10 people, including, Dressrosa, um, and the Nefertari family, the Cobra people of the Alabaster Kingdom. I think they were in cahoots originally with the Gorsai in taking down the Joyboy Kingdom. Um, and I'll try to go into that later, so remind me, Nikki. But I think they were one of
Yeah.
the big factors of taking down the Joyboy Kingdom. Um, Actually, I'll go into it now. It's basically, I think that the devil fruits that we received, I think those were from what's called like the Martians or whatever you want to call them, the aliens of the One Piece, the robots on the moon where Enel is. Because we know that there are other planets orbiting or other moons, whatever you want to call them, orbiting the One Piece verse, the main Earth, or whatever you want to call it. And I personally see that the big boost in technology from the Ancient Kingdom, because we know that they were more advanced than we are currently. I think they were the ancestors of the Vegapunk race, as they call them, which is the ones with the big heads that we see with the Nels cover page. And I think they came down to the One Piece verse in the Ancient Kingdom around the same time that Joy Boy had his rule over his kingdom, and they most likely kind of showered them with gifts. Now, the big thing with the technology burst would it explain it because if we have outside help, so again, the Vegapunk people, we know that they're very intelligent people, they're the Einsteins of the verse. Is if people know in real life, Egypt is the hieroglyphs, the little like drawings on the pyramids, on the inside mainly of the pyramids, there have been times where we see things like jet fighters or things that look similar and reflect current technology. And obviously, like if you look at how like big and how complex a lot of the engineering of these pyramids are, it would be fair to say, and a lot of people have discussed it still to this day, that it's almost impossible that like they could have built it with that technology and everything like that, and how well it was designed, and again knowing like technology from the future, it's just crazy. So the big thing out there, the conspiracy or whatever you want to call it, the rumor is that like aliens came to Earth and taught the Egyptians all this stuff. And I think Oda's kind of reflecting that because he takes a lot of knowledge from the real world and implements it into the One Piece verse. I think he's making the Vegapunk race, as I'll call them, the Martians, the basically aliens that came to Earth, to Joy Boy's kingdom, and shared their knowledge with them. And I think that knowledge was specifically devil fruits. And why I say this is we know that devil fruits in general, even some of the lesser ones, such as the wax fruit and stuff like that, they could be used for huge common purposes, such as like let's say they made a wax bridge or whatever that's as strong as steel, stuff like that. And imagine if a lot of people had access to these devil fruits and they were a common item and they weren't used for war, that would be a huge boost to the economic gain and the population gain of the Joy Boy Kingdom. And so it would make sense of how they were so vast in technology, how they were so far ahead of where we are now in the series. If there was much more of these Vegapunk people teaching everyone how to use devil fruits, um, and going to the Adam and Eve theory is we've seen it a couple times. I know Alpha Too Late was a big person on it. Was that if the tree of life or the tree of knowledge has the devil fruits growing on it, and we go with the idea that there is Adam and Eve, which I think is Joy Boy and maybe his wife or whatever. I think the snake, this is going to be kind of where the BlackBeard ties into. The snake was the original Marshall D. Teach. And I think he was the original D at some point in
Dun,
time.
dun,
Uh,
dun.
and um,
Okay.
this is kind of where it goes kind of a little bit crazy, but like I think he was what represents the snake in that term. And we know that there have been ideas of religion and oppression and all these other things, but mainly religion was a huge thing in One Piece. Like Kumba carrying the Bible, and all these, Saint Charlos and Saint et cetera, et cetera, et cetera, right? Being the celestial dragons, is I could see the original celestial dragons and the original Gorosei being kind of the religious sect, the sect of the One Piece verse, in the sense that they saw these aliens giving devil fruits out to Joy Boy. Joy Boy was most likely accepting of them, and I could see that the main religious sect, so again the religion of like anti-devil fruits or whatever you want to call them, would be the Gorosei. And I think that they had a problem with Joy Boy using these gifts to benefit the society because again they're called or seen as devil fruits nowadays. And so I feel like they kind of saw them as the gift of the devil, while Joy Boy saw them as the gift of God. And so going by like the idea that the fruit of knowledge was never supposed to be touched, it was also supposed to be in the Garden of Eden. I see that the Gorosei was against that, and basically they went with the original Marshall D. Teach and the Ten Kingdoms, and basically kind of had the original Marshall D. Teach take down from the inside, from being a D, take down Joy Boy, which I would assume his main people were Ds. And so, with that kind of being said, I think that basically the Gorosei made an alliance of some sort with the Marshall D. Teach, the original one, and then we had the original Ten Kingdom leaders teaming up, and they were promised, land and all money or whatever they were promised if they were to take down Joy Boy. And so they did that, and then now we know that there were poneglyphs being made, which is now linked to the Kozuki clan, Odin, and we know that they were made by then back then. And so I see that the original Kozuki leader, so Odin's, great great great, ancestor, or whatever you want to call him or her, uh, was told by Joy Boy to start making notes to leave around the world, and the idea that down the line a successor, which is currently Luffy, but before that would have been Roger, and maybe more before that as well, um, would find these and kind of, in a sense, take revenge. Take back the world from where the Gorosei were leading it, and so that's where we get these poneglyphs coming from. And now that we know that, we're going to see more of it later down the
Just
line.
to,
Yeah,
sorry
go
to
ahead.
interrupt again, but just to think, what do you think about how Dragon falls into this? Because
Oh,
my personal opinion is like he has obviously Luffy's gonna be the one to find the One Piece, but when it comes to Joy Boy and everything like that, I think Dragon has more of importance, if you know what I mean.
I think he's kind of like a message bearer, because the big thing with Dragon and Garp, right, is obviously Garp's in the Marines, and people assume Dragon was one of the admirals or something along those lines in the Marines. Like that's a big, big theory. And I'd assume the O'Hara incident was what drove Dragon to kind of go, fuck this, like, this is going out of, control. Like we're basically genociding an entire like race for trying to learn the ancient kingdom history and whatnot. And so I think Dragon saw that as the time to kind of turn on the government and kind of do his own thing. And the big thing about Dragon is people like don't really take into consideration is his tattoos, his tribal tattoos, which in Native American like language is kind of like a symbol of like a motto, like kind of like treat others fairly, whatever. Like each village has their own, each tribe has their own, like the Sioux and the Dakotas and stuff like that. And so I think
Yeah,
Dragon somehow is either could be related to the Shadorians, or the Skypians, because we've seen those similar tattoos there. Um, and that's kind of how I
yeah. So
personally.
Garp
Well,
was pimping out those Shandorians.
I mean, not so much that, but like I think Garp, because one big thing about Garp, which people always ask is, why is Garp in the Marines if he, is a D? Like it doesn't make sense, because the Ds are the Antichrist, they're the devils, they're the opposites, they're the downfall of the Celestial Dragon. So why would the Celestial Dragon want a D in the, government, especially since we have Drago, G Saul, and maybe many others. And how I see it is Garp being probably one of the closest people to Sengoku, and Sengoku being a Fleet Admiral, clearly knowing what the One Piece is, as his face revealed when Whitebeard talked about. I think Garp knows at least a section of the D relation to Celestial Dreams and the Void Century, at least a bit of it. I don't think he knows the full story, because in the Shaki bar in Archipelago, right, we hear them talk. Robin asked about, do you guys know, talking to Rayleigh, do you guys know about the Void Century? Like, do you know what happened? And Rayleigh said something along the lines of,
Oh yeah.
it's
Sorry to interrupt again, but let's just say check the hangout. That's what I'll say. Because
Okay.
someone's left a comment for you.
But yeah, like basically, like Garp, or sorry, Rayleigh basically was asked by Robin, what's the kind of void, like
It's
what's the
like,
void century, like what happened there,
yeah.
right? Like what's the entire knowledge that you have?
Oh,
And Rayleigh,
Usopp asked, but because Usopp's like, then,
Usopp wanted to know what the One Piece was. He didn't know about the void century.
oh
Robin
yeah,
was
yeah,
the one
you're
that
right,
asked
yeah,
about the
yeah,
void
Robin.
century. Um,
I should shut up now.
um, that's fine. But no, so basically, like he asked about the void, or sorry, Robin asked about the void century, and Rayleigh offered saying that we could tell you, but like you'd rather go on the journey. But the biggest thing that he said was along the lines of, there's two perspectives to what they saw. Is Roger and his crew saw one perspective, and I would assume Garp, if he knows or saw something of that, right? Because he's always with Roger, from we know, like he's always near Roger. Is I could see
Yeah,
Roger telling him or him somehow finding out a different perspective. And going back to what I was saying about my theory about the D's is if they really were using the devil fruits, and if there were like things, like drawback effects such as Law using his room too much or Luffy with his gear second, stuff like that. Like if these devil fruits were actually giving them diseases that they couldn't cure, it would be kind of like a double-edged sword. And so I could see why people would call them devil fruits and such like that. And I could see that the Gorsai and maybe Garp being one side of the coin, seeing it, as like we need to keep the voice injury hidden because otherwise the world would be shaken up, and we have a civilization where like it's functional to a point, right? It's maybe better than what Joy Boy had or something in their mind, so maybe they don't want to change it. And then we have, Dragon and like Rayleigh and Roger who saw a different perspective, and they kind of wanted to change the world. And I think that's where the ideals will clash way down the line. Um, as the revolutionaries versus the evil pirates, or sorry, the evil marines, and like it'll be the two sides of the coin. Because I assume when we get to Raftel, I assume people like Luffy and Robin and his crew will see it. But even among the crew, I could see there being different perspectives of whether or not they should change the world. Because going to Kingdom, not really spoiler, but like Sai trying to unite of all of China basically was his main goal, as a king.
yes,
But he understood that there is bloodshed. That if we try to do this, there's so much more to uniting the world because there's politics, there's economics, there's religion, all these other aspects that not everyone thinks alike. And that's kind of how I view it: is if they change the world or they attempted to change the world in the final war, which is what Oda's foreshadowing being the biggest of all that we've ever seen. And if it's like 10 times Marine Ford or whatever, every citizen in the world is part of it. There's going to be a ton of bloodshed. Like there's going to be so much that's going to be crazy, which is it's going to be hard because Oda doesn't like to kill off characters, but like he's going to have to do some of that to give an example, an aspect of why like the world needs to change. Because again, we have things like slavery in the world and such like that. Um, and so going back to what I was saying is like Rayleigh and Roger, I think, saw one aspect of it and saw the world had to change. And I think Garp and some of the good Marines like Sengoku and stuff probably saw a different aspect of the truth of the Void Century. And so they didn't want to change it because it may have been better off where it's now than it was previous to it. Or that even they could be are powerless to do something. And so, kind of tying back to the Blackbeard, I'll go a little more into that because this is what my themes about. Is I think Blackbeard now, in a sense, is a reincarnation of the original Marshall D Teach. And anyone familiar with Naruto kind of knows where I'm going with this. Is like Ashura, Indra, Naruto, Sasuke, Hashirama, Madara. Is you basically have a type of soul or the actual soul being reincarnated into a different living vessel, different body, but being the same personality, being the same person at heart. And I think Luffy's going to be a reincarnation of someone, either Joy Boy or even it could be of Roger because of similarities. Um, and the whole thing about One Piece, in my opinion, is that it's a passing of time, but it's also the passing of the will, a passing of the heart. You know, Roger and Luffy are very similar. Shanks and Roger, Shanks and Luffy similar, um, kind of like that. And so I see that the passing of the will is going to be the passing from Joy Boy to Roger to Shanks to Luffy, and Blackbeard having the original Marshall D teach, and maybe people in between, but the original Marshall D teach to the new Marshall D teach, and trying to change the world for his own perspective. Maybe he has a way of changing it in his mind that's better for it that others might not agree with. Similar to again Naruto reference is Sasuke trying to basically make everyone hate him, pulling a Lelouch. And making everyone hate him, being the darkness of the world around him is united, and that they all try to take him down. So he's like the one threat, and that's his way of uniting. So I could see Blackbeard being
like
something.
Gundam Wing.
Yeah, like a lot of shit
Old
shows do
old
this. It's like a
reference.
theme is like, if
Yeah.
kind of like World War II is, Hitler being the bad guy is why, all the world united, to take him down, even though before they weren't really united. Um, and so I could see it being something like where Blackbeard maybe is, like I don't want to say a good guy because obviously, kind of not, but he has similar traits to Luffy in the sense that he understands that, adventure is cool and like dreams will never die and stuff like this. And like going back to like my theory about like his soul being reincarnated and stuff like that, is I see it being, when Luffy and him talked about, uh, sorry, Luffy and Zoro seeing, right, seeing Blackbeard on Jaya and talking to like him with Nami. Nami basically wanted to ask Blackbeard for directions, and then they kind of walked away while Blackbeard was laughing. But they had these special eyes, you'll call it, when Luffy gets serious or something like that, where they were kind of shooken a bit, or sorry, shaken a bit. Um, and it looked to me like they knew something was up with Blackbeard. Like they knew something more than what the readers knew, and they specifically said, to Nami, Luffy said the first part, and Zoro said the second part was, it's not him, it's they or them, however you want to say it. Um, and the idea that it's more than one. And we've heard theories about Blackbeard being, maybe a twin fetus or a chimera, Cerberus, all these other theories. But I think it boils down, in my opinion, to him being a reincarnation of this other soul, and this other soul living inside him. And
Let me
yeah, go
ask a
ahead.
question again. Like, don't you think the possibility, because it'd be quite interesting as well, if it's a different D who's a reincarnate, like what if it was Dragon actually is actually a reincarnate of that guy, but he just chose a different path, and then like you know what I mean, like the D's just switch lineage.
Yeah, like like what's that? Yeah, I see what you're saying. Because like one big thing was Wiper said you're not the Dia like Roger's been waiting for,
Yeah, because it's
which is
like
clearly he's talking about Luffy at the moment. Um,
yeah, because it's like Ace is like he's not like the way they explain about Ace and Luffy, for example, right? What from what we know about Roger, Luffy's the closest as in personality traits to Ace. I mean to sorry to Roger. But even though Ace does have some of his personality traits, essentially like for example, when Akane talked bad about his Whitebeard, he couldn't leave. He couldn't take that disrespect because even Shanks
right.
noticed that's how Roger would have acted in that
Yeah.
situation. So
Yeah. So
I'm
it's the
just
whole.
saying, do you think that like the wills can be passed on to different D's
Yeah, no,
essentially?
I
Like
think it could be passed on to like different Ds, but I just think in this specific case that we had the same D reincarnated. Like for instance, Roger clearly, Luffy, from what we know, isn't the biological son of Roger. Ace is, right? And Ace and Roger shared similar like ideas and like kind of stuff like that. But I'd say Luffy had more of the similar traits and similar will than Roger had, and wanting to be the Pirate King and all these other things than Ace did. You know, Ace was kind of more of like he had the physical traits and kind of the emotional traits, I would say, of protecting his friends over himself and, self-sacrificing. But Luffy overall, I think, was more similar to Roger from what we
yeah,
saw than
Ace had
Ace was.
daddy issues essentially.
Yeah.
Wait.
And so like I just see it as like in Blackbeard's case, he was the original Marshall D. Teach kind of reincarnated, but I think either something because like we know now in I guess this is a spoiler, so anyone that's not caught up, don't listen to this part. But lineage factors with Judge and Vegapunk, I think that's way more. That was such a big revolution in my mind because I think there's more to lineage factors. Because lineage factors in my mind is you could see it as like an ancestry tree, but I see it more as a DNA strand, as in like maybe the Gorsei and these Drake like sorry, the Gorsei and the government were trying to reincarnate either, original people or even themselves to new bodies Orochimaru style. And they were basically trying to create a specific human again and again and again, which could be Roger or Joyboy or whatever. And, there's ideas that Blackbeard is a failed test subject out there from Roger. Um, and stuff like that, and like other people as well. Which I don't know how I feel about that, but anyway, so like Lynch factors, I think is going to play a big role into the story down the line, especially with Luffy and Dragon. And I just think that along the lines of Blackbeard is, we have the idea that these devil fruits have souls in them by Jabra. Jabra said it to Kaku as kind of a joke, saying, get away from me with that devil fruit because I already have a devil fruit inside of me, the wolf fruit. and get away the draft fruit from me because our devil fruits will interact and we'll both die because they'll be fighting each other, right? Which is the idea for him and for other people in the series why two devil fruits can't exist in the same body, correct? Is because
Mm.
it basically takes over your soul. But if somehow Blackbeard has two souls, right? And his original soul had the Blackbeard, or sorry, the Yami Yami fruit, right? And his original, like his own soul has that one, but then somehow his original soul, in the sense that it's the original Marshall D teacher soul, could control the Whitebeard fruit, the Quake fruit, right? That's how I kind of view it as if he has two different souls at one time, he could maybe hold on to two different fruits.
So is that
Um,
given the possibility of, like, for example, if a descendant of one of the people who are one of the D's in the Void Sanctuary happens to get the same devil fruit again, does that mean they could have two devil fruits technically then, or is it just because
um,
Blackbeard's special?
I think it's just Blackbeard special because Marco did say his body's special and stuff like that. So Marco, I think Marco and Whitebeard knew more than we know. Obviously as readers, I think there's more
Yeah,
to that
definitely. Because
sentence than just like what we saw. And yeah, so like I don't think it's something where like let's say if like it's hard to say because like I think Blackbeard is going to be such a unique entity in the One Piece verse that it's going to be very crazy when we learn about it. It's going to kind of like turn the world on side in terms of the IRL world, like the One Piece fan base. Because obviously, for people that didn't really read One Piece before this whole Marineford arc, they reference having two devil fruits as like it just is impossible. There's literally no way it could happen. And Oda kind of concrete said it multiple times over that like there's no way you could have it. We will never see it in the story. And obviously there are people who say like, oh well, I saw it coming, but like from how Oda said it, it was just never going to happen. So when we saw that as a reader base, when that panel, that chapter first came out, right? It blew a lot of people's mind. Like theories were coming out left and right about like how Blackbeard did it, the knife, the cloak, the carpet, all these crazy things, right? But I
yeah,
think it's just something specifically to where him being able to hold two devil fruits was based on his two different souls that he had. Um, and again, if we go back to look at Shanks, right, with how he got scarred, Shanks did the Whitebeard, look at the scar, I got from him. And I know a lot of people say, well, oh, maybe Blackbeard was that OP, he was that strong. But, if he was contesting with Ace, to say it nicely, right, you know, I don't see how he would scar someone like Shanks. Even back when Shanks was, a rookie or whatever, I just think that, Shanks was stronger than him to the point where, like, even on guard, it shouldn't have happened in my mind. So I was thinking of reasons why it could have happened. And well, again, back to referencing Naruto is when Jiraiya taught Naruto pre-Shippuden during the time skip of how to control the tailed beast inside of him. The
mm.
tailed beast, the four tails of the nine tails came out and scarred him. And I feel like something similar where if Shanks and him were in a death fight, right, with Blackbeard, and they were fighting to the death, and there's no way that Blackbeard could have won. I could see somehow that the soul, the original Marshall D. Teach, would have been able to somehow come out and control his body, his vessel, the new Blackbeard's body, and take down Shanks. At the time, like scar him to get away. And obviously, maybe I'm looking too much into it, but like that's just kind of how I viewed it. You know, I'm a bit of a Shanks fanboy, but but like I think there's more to it. With Shanks being, in my opinion, one of the strongest characters
Can't
in the
just
verse.
accept Blackbeard can put that work in, and just
Yeah,
can't accept
maybe, but
it.
yeah, no, and like I just think there's more to it because one big thing about me is like looking at Blackbeard is he has this book about devil fruits, right? But if he knew about the Yami Yami, right, and we could assume the government and all the Gorosei and all the Yonkos probably have a book of some sorts, right, similar to that, right? Why wouldn't
Hmm.
they send someone out to take the Yami Yami if it's really that important, right? If it's really that special? I think it was a special fruit that either again the original Marshall D teach had, or it could be something where like he specifically knew that this fruit was going to help him later down the line, and but like my thing is there's some way he had to know that this fruit was going to be a big bonus over other fruits, right? Because he chose it specifically. He did the one unthinkable thing, which is to kill Thatch, which is to kill a crew member on
Is the
their crew.
ironclad rule, yeah. Ironclad
Yeah,
rule on the pirate ship. You can steal, you can maybe take their girl,
yeah.
you could probably like fucking steal their food and eat their food, but you can't kill one of the members.
Exactly. And so, to kind of like, I'll try to wrap this up. But like basically how I saw it is he took a high risk, but it was such a high reward in his mind that it was worth it. And he planned everything out prior to that because he stayed number two. Or sorry, he stayed under the second division commander Ace because Ace offered to give him the position because he was the senior member, but he refused it, which Shanks said was him being sly, hiding under the radar of the Whitebeard Pirates flag. And then Marine Ford and all of Impel Down, everything that led up to it, getting Whitebeard's fruit was all calculated. Um, and so personally, I just see it as he kind of had more intel than even the Yonkos did somehow outside the book. And the only way I could think of that would be if someone else, from way back when that knew of the fruit's potential or power or whatever, told him about it. And that's just kind of how I was going with it. So I'll
I
try
was
to
gonna
wrap.
just
Yeah, yeah, and I'll wrap it up after that.
I was gonna say when
You're being Mr. Roboto right now.
okay. Oh, okay.
Oh, there, you're good now.
Mr.
Good, say it.
Roboto.
Yeah, say it now.
Okay, I was gonna say basically, do you think the fact that from the motivation we have from Whitebeard, he basically doesn't really, he just wants the family.
Correct.
He's a very, yeah, just simple-minded dude. He's just like, not simple-minded as in he's dumb, but as in he's
But
just like,
he's a
he
simple
wants just a
goal.
simple things, yeah, simple
Yeah.
things in life. That's what he wants. So do you think the fact that like everyone else kind of were all like the way I can't remember who explained their marine food, but they said like he gave us, yeah, it was Ace, I think. Like he gave us a home, and that's why we call him Pops, and why I call him like father and stuff like that. So do you think the fact that everyone's more concentrating on just a relationship, so when it comes to like devil fruit stuff, because I'm sure Whitebeard went to all these different places and that, but it's just that Blackbeard is the only one since the beginning has always been on this. I'm gonna
Like,
become
yeah,
Pirate
he's
King.
hunting out devil fruits and he's hunting out strong people right now. But I think there's gonna be more to it because I think a lot of people don't understand the like villains in the One Piece verse. They're villains, whatever, but they're not like the Disney villains. They're not like the, I want to take over the world, end of story, right? Generally there's more to them. Like Dofi, he had a tragic backstory. There's a reason why he became the way he is. I'm sure the same's gonna be with Kaido and Jack. Big Mom, we kind of saw a little bit of it. Each person in the One Piece verse, whether they're good or bad, always have some sort of like backstory to why they're doing what they're doing, right? And so I
Mm-hmm.
think that Blackbeard has that black backstory. And again, I relate it to the idea that I think he's going to try to change the world in his own idea. And in his mind, it might make sense, and like again, he might have told his crew because the crew that he had prior to this Impel Down, right, they were with him for a reason, I think. Like, and I could see it being a reason
Yeah,
because
that's quite interesting actually.
yeah,
Yeah.
like I think it's a reason where like it's similar to Luffy. Because let's be honest, he is the reflection of Luffy. People say he's the evil reflection, but I think he's kind of the different reflection. I don't think there's really good and evil in the One Piece first. Totally, I think there's kind of that gray area. Like for a majority of characters at least. Like Dofi is evil, but he did it in a weird way, in a sense that like it made sense to why he was doing it in his mind. Um, and I don't want to go too much into that because take another hour. but
Yeah, that's true.
it kind of goes to the basis of psychology is the idea that if you put like a six on the floor and two people are standing on opposite sides of it, it may look like a six to one person but a nine to the other. It's kind of similar to that. Is It all comes down to perspective, which is what Oda's trying to tell us with the Rayleigh scene with Shaki's bar, and overall is what we see. Because again, there are celestial dragons like Horizon, and like royalty like Sabo who were born, into a high power, a high position, but they chose a kind of more of like a human, a more humble life than the others did. Other like of Stelly, of Dofi, you know. So I think
Mm.
it comes down to the gray area that their perspectives are different on life. Um, and so I guess to wrap it up real quick is, in short, basically the Joyboy Kingdom got betrayed by the current 10 major families, with Alabasta being the one that kind of forewarned them about what happened, which is why there was a poneglyph there. And then again, we have poneglyphs scattered throughout the world, some which are very specific to a kind of farewell message from Joyboy, which I think was during his downfall, which he may have sent someone out to kind of put them around the world in the hopes that eventually someone will find these poneglyphs and take on the mantle of saving the world in a sense, which is what Luffy will be the one to do. Um, and then again, we had the original Marshal D. Teach, who was the one that was the snake in the tree, and the one that basically betrayed the Joy Boy Kingdom. The D is from the inside, so he's kind of like the special exile D. Um, Working with the Gorosei, and the Gorosei are kind of the puppets now. The only ones that really truly know what happened in the Voice Edge, besides probably the main characters like the Roger Pirates. And so that's kind of where I was going with all this. So leave your thoughts, I guess, in the comment section. And this is kind of like I told Nikki before we started. This is kind of a Hail Mary. It's something where if you come to the theory without an open mind, it's not going to make a whole lot of sense. But if you kind of look at it from my perspective and the perspective of, the good and the bad, the idea of the gray area in the story, it does start to make a bit of sense. And so if you guys have any, questions or comments, or you want to say, whether this was good or bad, besides saying it sucks or it's good, leave comments in the section below, and give a shout out to Outer Haven and to Nikki.
Thanks
So,
for letting me come through.
yeah.
DK, thanks, man.
But yeah, so we're going to be doing a video soon on Outer Haven. Link to this as well. Probably do a theory discussion on there as well. I'm going to start doing more videos on my channel, kind of with the basic theories I want to start talking about, but I want to do theories that are very farther into the story and ones that I don't want to see, repeated by other YouTubers over and over again. So I've been kind of trying to do it on my own, which is why I'm not on Outer Haven right now doing it on there. So people from Outer Haven, thanks for joining and watching. And if anyone else sees it, like I said, leave your like or leave your subscription below. And see you guys later.
And before we leave, I'll give you a little outro.
Yeah.
DGK, yeah.
Peace, guys.